This is Radical Love Live, an ongoing series of podcasts and special events where we explore faith outside the boxes. Hosted by Mark Dilcom and Kelly Wilson.
Hey everybody, it's Mark, and welcome to another episode of Radical Love Live. I am going to be hosting this myself. Kelly couldn't join us for this week, so you get me. And this week we have a very special guest with us, Reverend Dr. R.A.Turner, and he's got a lot to share with us about his own journey, as well as what he's doing in his ministry and how he's bringing call to action in reparations. So, welcome to the show, Robert.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Bart.
Absolutely. So, Robert, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your backstory?
So I'm Robert Turner. I'm originally from Alabama, Tuskegee, Alabama, to be exact. Roll Tide. We can't say that without saying Roll Tide. And I was born on the campus of Tuskegee University. My parents went to school there. In fact, I was born in the same hospital that from 1932 to 1972, the United States government ministered the Tuskegee syphilis study. Pretty terrible. Then went to college at the University of Alabama, Roll Tide again, and was a part of the student faculty, the Senate faculty senate, giving an apology for their role in slavery, because at that time colleges and universities owned slaves, and today, as you have fringe benefits of dental and health insurance, back in those days you would have a slave as a part of your fringe benefits. And so I was a part of that. Did some missionary work across the country in places like Kenya, Egypt, and New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Got my doctorate in ministry after I got my master's in divinity. And I have my whole life been someone who sought to bring racial healing through nonviolent means. I was served in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and inspired by God, started to try to bring some healing and injustice for those who had been killed in the 1921 race massacre of Tulsa that happened, where the first time airplanes were used to drop bombs on American soil was right there in Tulsa. Now, it wasn't Pearl Harbor. It wasn't at 9/11. It was in 1921, May 31st through June the 1st. And the first perpetrators of that were American citizens, right, who happened to be white. And the first victims of that aerial terrorism were Black people. Homes were bombed, their churches were bombed, their schools were bombed. And unlike the last two times of aerial terrorism, 9/11, we went to war, and we just got our troops out of Afghanistan. Pearl Harbor, we obliterated, Japan and Hiroshima. And in fact, to this day, they still don't have a standing military. But for the very first act of aerial terrorism that happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, not one of those individuals who dropped bombs on those American citizens went to jail, at all. Like, to this day, nobody went to jail. So even taking out repairing or paying for the harm that was caused, because the insurance companies did not honor one claim. So none of those folks who had home insurance, the church that I pastored now, back then, none of our insurance claims were honored. And to this day, nothing has been paid, and nobody's gone to jail for the very first act of aerial terrorism. And in fact, one of the companies that, according to the Race Riot Commission report of 2001, came out, one of the companies that owned the airplanes that were used in the terrorist attack, Sinclair Oil, they have not ever paid or done anything, right, to repair the harm. And so that's something I spoke out against before it was even popular, before people knew about it, on TV shows and on documentaries. I would go out every week to City Hall, and thankful now to see. And in fact, I started the lawsuit that was recently heard in the court case. And I now, God called me to Baltimore. And so I'm here serving at a much larger congregation, but I still love people in Vernon and Tulsa. And I feel led to now walk from Baltimore to the White House, and I do that every month. God kind of spoke to me on once I turned 40 years of age last year, and I came here from Tulsa, and I was like, God, what is it that you would have me do? How can I show my love for you, for your people, and your love for justice and righteousness today in this new context? And I felt God shared with me, don't really change your message. The country still needs to be repaired. And I was like, well, how do I show that love where I am? And I looked at a map and I saw that Baltimore is approximately 40 miles from the White House. And I found the route that did not require me to take an interstate, and it was Route 1. And so I started on last year on October 12th, which was Indigenous Americans Day. Some folks call it Columbus Day.
Mm.
And I started it, and I've been doing it every month, and it's actually 42.9 miles. So every mile, every step counts. And
That
I've
sure
been
does.
with my sign and carrying a wreath of 400 flowers, roses symbolic of the 400 years of oppression. And I started at 5:26 a.m. And if you put a 1 in front of that 5, you get 1526, which is the year the slave trade really began in America. And I'm doing it because I need God, has called me to show this act of solidarity, of love. And I really do it out of love for this nation, because I do believe and love to God, who loves justice. And obedience is better than sacrifice. And I've gotten a lot of different responses on my walk. And I got a book coming out uh, in the spring of this year
Yeah,
that talks more about, concrete measures for repair that we as a nation could be doing as well.
Robert, you have done a lot in your 40 years, that's for sure. And thank you for giving quite the backstory there, because oh my gosh, you've given us plenty of to work with for probably a 2-hour conversation here. Um, let's start with the your insight on Tulsa. So I was a little bit surprised. Honestly, I did not know the history. I know about what I thought I knew the entire story, but I had no idea that that was actually bombed by planes. So clearly, I'm missing a key component to that. Nor was there anybody ever held to account for that. So tell us a little bit more about that lawsuit. You mentioned that you were a part of that. So what's the purpose of this?
There was a lawsuit back in the early 2000s that was led by Professor Ogletree, and even Johnny Cochran was a part of that.
Okay.
One of my law school professors, Al Brophy in Alabama, was a part of that. Suzanne Malveaux Professor Malveaux was a part of that, and several others, right? And that lawsuit, unfortunately, was unsuccessful. But what that lawsuit was able to do was galvanize political support, um, where the state legislature of Oklahoma actually had 5 recommendations on what they thought repair should be. And this is a Republican governor who established this commission.
Right.
And the first thing was to, hey, let's give reparations to
Yeah.
to the survivors,
Yeah.
then the descendants, then set up somewhat of a historical center to tell the story,
Yeah.
set up an enterprise zone for the business to come back. And the 5th was a scholarship, right, for the descendant children, so they can go to school for free. At first they signed off on it, the governor signed off on it, but then the press hit him, and it was just something that he ran away from very quickly. So from basically 2001 to 2018, when I get to Tulsa, I got there in 17, but I didn't start speaking out on it until 18. My protest began September 12th, 2018, matter of fact. And it's kind of funny, my protest in Baltimore began October 12th, 2022. And so once I would do the weekly protests, I did some research in the church I pastor and found out that our basement was there before the massacre and still there now. So it's one of the only surviving structures. It's the only surviving structure from Greenwood Avenue that was before the massacre and still is there. And I let that be known to the world. And I began to look for an attorney to represent us because we still had legal standing because we were not a part of the original lawsuit. And I found one, and he also found some other people who said they were survivors, and they got on the lawsuit. And the judge just ruled that they didn't that we were not successful. And first, before they did that, they said that some of the plaintiffs should not be on there. I thought that was a terrible reason, and so they took off Vernon, because we added the words historic to our name because we got on the historic registry,
Sure.
and the judge basically said that because historic Vernon didn't exist in 1905, then we had to be taken off the lawsuit. But the church was there, and that's how we got to be called historic Vernon, because the historic register added our name to that roll. But what happened in Tulsa was terrible. None of the perpetrators were ever brought to justice. They put American citizens, veterans in our wars in concentration camps. In order to get out, you had to have a green card and a white male sponsor to vouch for you. In less than 18 hours, you know, square blocks were destroyed, right? I mean, 32, 34 square blocks, city square blocks were destroyed in less than 18 hours. Over 1,246 homes destroyed, like went up in flame. Over $2 million worth, $2,019,21 worth, was just went up in flames in less than 18 hours, right? And so you had at least 300 people killed. More than that, 10,000 people were made homeless in less than 18 hours. 10,000 people, and nobody goes to jail. Nobody gets an insurance claim paid from those who were victimized. You had outright mayhem in American street, and this wasn't the Wild West America. This was so-called civilized American society,
Right.
1921. And to this day, there's been no criminal investigation at all, and not just the civil side, but these are criminal charges that were never filed.
Well, it's there's just not words that I can even bear because it's clearly a part of my own ignorance of the full story. So, for any of our listeners as well who maybe like me, there's a lot of research that I need to do myself to fully understand the impact of this, and the fact that this did happen within the United States against our own citizens. So talk about a form of domestic terrorism, essentially. In fact, it is. It's not essential. That is what it is. And this is not the only time, though, that communities have of our own citizens have been put into situations. It still happens to this day. So I guess I'm going to fast forward here. As you said, your call brought you into Baltimore, working at the in the community there, and that started this walk. So, which, by the way, your next walk is on November 11th, right?
Very close, Friday, November the 10th.
November the 10th. That's correct. Yeah. Sorry about that,
Veterans
guys.
Day is on the 11th, but the holiday for people getting off work is on the 10th.
That's correct. So Friday, November 10th. So on this will be what, your 13th
Is it my 13th?
or 14th?
I think it's my 14th.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. My 14th. Wow.
Robert, that's amazing. 42.9 miles, man.
I got over 600 miles on my feet.
You sure do. And you said you brought one of your sons along with you as well, right?
My son.
Yeah.
Well,
Did
no, my boys would no. This is they asked about going, but my boys, they have to get their endurance up a little bit more.
Right.
What do you think is
I
about?
didn't even do it yet. Good for you. So who else joins you in this walk?
When I first started, Mark, it was pretty much me doing the whole one. But recently, like when I say recently, my last two or three walks, I've
Yeah.
had somebody join me the whole way, right? So that's been pretty cool and very refreshing. But yeah, it's pretty much been myself the whole time and whole way.
Mm.
And I'm grateful that God has given me strength. Now, the church's security detail accompanies me in a car. They follow me and trail me in a car, but it is not like a caravan of people. I have maybe at most 3 cars that are in front, behind, and kind of running in between. And they carry like water for me, snacks for me, and and things of that sort to make sure that I'm hydrated and well fueled for the walk.
Yeah, because I'm doing the math on that at even 3 miles per hour, 43 miles. That's how many hours does that take? 10, 11
Well,
hours?
if you GPSed it, it would
Uh,
say 16,
yeah.
17 max hours. I tend to, thank God, get there between 12, 13 hours. It's not taking me longer than 14.
Oh, wow. I'm just I'm amazed at your conviction for that, but it just shows the passion of one person to prove that, by doing what you do, it shows the power of one person in
Yeah.
making a difference, which is, the thing where I asked you before we started recording the episode is here, how do we talk about how do people actually get involved, right? Because it's not just about you pointing this out, but how do others get called into action, right? And could call it whatever you will, whether it's your ministry or it's just the right thing to do. I think um, there are folks out there that they say this is great, but they simply don't know what to do and how they could be a part of the solution, other than, prayers and thoughts or something like this and saying, that's great. But how are you engaging folks and bringing them up to speed on what your call is? And I want to make sure we don't skip past the part about what exactly you are discussing both in the book and what is part of your passion about reparations. So don't let me get ahead of that, but
Mm.
take it in which direction. Either if you want to describe reparations first and then talk about how people get involved, I'm good either way. So
I think that's a very valid point, and because this is something that God has called me to do, but it's not something that's just left up to me,
right.
if that makes any sense. And so,
Oh,
when I
yeah.
was in seminary, one of my professors, who was my professor of evangelism, and I went to two seminaries, one of them in Alabama. But when I got a job, because I got married and trying to start a family, I had to go to another seminary. But the first one I went was Beeson, which was on the Southern Baptist campus, Sanford University in Birmingham. One of my professors, I'll never forget his name, Dorsey, Professor Dorsey. We were talking about power evangelism, and he read off a quote, and I don't remember where he got it from, but he shared with the class that I don't care what you do, if you're on fire for it, people will come from thousands of miles away just to watch you burn. And that spoke to me, to whatever I do for God, be on fire for it. Be on fire for it. And scripture teaches us that if I be lifted up from the earth, right, I'll draw all men unto me. And so one of the things, Mark, that I'm very clear about in any conversation concerning activism is that it is not Robert at all that's doing it. Like, this is not by my strength. This is not by my might. In fact, it is so much outside of Robert, um, that every doctor I have, from my own personal physician, general physician, to my podiatrist, has told me I should not be walking like this far. The human body is not
Right.
designed to walk 42.9 miles in a day. It's just not, right? And you add on top of that, I'm 6 foot 6 inches, over 240 pounds, and all that weight on my feet, my knees, my hips, my back is not sustainable, right? But every time I get out of bed, every time I started Care Apart, Mark, I have never not felt the presence of God with me.
Amen.
I've never not felt God. In fact, I feel really God's presence more there than I do in some churches I go preach in. And so, um, that's first and foremost, right? That this work is not Robert. It's not of Robert. It's not by Robert. It's not even for Robert, right? It is for the world. It's for my ministry to God's children, that He loves in this world. God so loved the world that He gave. And so because I love God, I try to show love to this world he created and those who live in it. And so I give of essentially my life. Because every time I'm on these walks, I first of all, I face a lot of hatred. I face a lot of vitriol. But even and I had people try to like run me off, or drive toward me and different. Yeah, it's been I've been even harassed by the police, on these walks. And but outside of that direct hatred that you feel and see and hear, um, just the fact that I can walk from Baltimore to the White House, 42.9 miles on roads, the most of which are not sidewalk. So I'm on the actual street. Um, and God has kept his hedge of protection around me so that no one who's looking down at their cell phone runs off the road. Or no sleepy driver, because I walk sometime 2, 3 in the morning,
Mm.
um, has run me over. So it's all God. And so what I when I the reason why I start off with that is because to answer your question, how to get other people involved, is really, you know, by trusting in God that He will be true to what He told me to do. That by me doing this is raising the awareness. By me doing this, I would never have thought in a million years that I'll be on the Radical Love podcast, right?
Right.
And so this is just a part of God showing his faithfulness to to what he's called me to do, because it takes conversations like this. It takes platforms like yours I've researched you. You've done a tremendous job for the kingdom in highlighting issues for your audience and to bringing things to their attention that they may not have been brought to had not they listened to your podcast. So I really commend you and your listeners and your followers. I encourage them to continue to watch and listen to your show, because only you will show them what they have not yet learned, and what they show and what you teach them through your show and through your audience. So I commend you on that. So it takes a lot more conversations like these. So what I have started to do, even more so, is avail myself to giving more of my time, right? And that's not even always paid, right? I'm willing to go and speak and to share and to provide witness for the issues that I have been blessed to learn more about, to share the knowledge that I have to hopefully change how people behave and what they think. Because I do believe that there are still more good people in this world than bad. I do believe in the better nature of man and woman, and that once activated by that knowledge, then they will change. The Bible says, "How can they hear without a preacher?" Before it says that faith come by hearing, and hearing the word of God. So there has to be somebody who they hear, and how can they hear unless how can they preach unless they be sent? And I feel like I was sent to share this message, um, that people can hear, that can help inform and improve, and add to their faith.
Well said, Robert. And thank you for the kind words as well. It's like you, I see this as a ministry, and I know some people get really tingly about words like that. They're like, well, especially for those that are, not in a faith program itself, and they may consider themselves agnostic. And the point is, it doesn't matter really, because as you said earlier, we're all children of God, children of divine, the Creator, universe, whatever it might be. There's the force that brings us all together into our oneness. Unfortunately, we also live in a world where we don't see that very often. Like instead, especially today's world of culture, where there's so much separation and binaryism and other elements that we think separate us when we actually are all in this journey together. So, I love what you said there. So, can we talk a little bit about the reparations themselves? Because I um, I imagine that, leading into your book, you're going to talk about practicals, but can you give us a little bit of a taste of what's in that, and things that we can start thinking about now? How do we actually become, a part of this, the process, and why we need to be a part of this? I think it's another part of it. There's a lot of well-meaning folks out there who really are Really not sure what is their role in this.
I think that everybody has a role, um, even if it's just to be a supporter of repair.
Yeah.
Um, in the book, I talk about specific forms of repair and reparation and what we need to get done and how we can get them done. And I divide them up into 4 categories: individual, societal, institutional, and spiritual. Right.
Mhm.
And I go through and this right now, the longest list of reparator ideas in the world. I have over 100 ways of giving reparation. Over 100 ways. There's no other book that you will find that has as many ideas and suggestions that's thought through, well researched, empirically based than what you will be getting in the book that I am offering. So for those who always say, well, what is it? What is that you want and why and all that type of stuff, you have a book coming out in April of 2024 that will answer all those questions and more, right? And so
Nice.
give you more than enough suggestions for what reparation looks like. And there are large initiatives, project programs, and there are also just some smaller forms of repair that individuals can do, right? There are things that an individual citizen, if they would like, can give um repair, because really it is about the intention matched with the action that what we're asking for and what you will see now. And then there are groups wanted to do some things societally. There's things you can do as a group and institution, and then to me the institutional chapter is the purest form. If you look at the UN definition of what reparations is, on what institutions are supposed to do to give repair for the issues and people that they've harmed. And spiritual, of course, being a person of faith, we have to be honest about the role that faith played in upholding and sustaining white supremacy, right? And
Yeah.
and so we just have to be honest about that, and we have to repair from that. And so I feel that um, this issue is not going away. And if we really love our children, love our grandchildren, we should not want them to be passed down this debt of an issue of a void that we have not repaid, right? We should not want that to be done. I don't want my 2 boys having to still talk about this and why haven't we gotten this. To me, America is the greatest country in the world, right? I would rather not, be anywhere else than America. But we also have to be honest about America and her flaws, right? America has as her original sin, racism,
Yeah.
um, white supremacy.
Yeah.
It established that as a part of one of her first rules, but before any other country, right, in the world, right? America established the delineation of what a black person is and what a white person is. Because when they first came over here, they were all either German, they were Swedish, they were whatever, they were Danish, but America made all white people from Europe to be considered white, and it made people from Ghana, made people from Nigeria, and people from Liberia, it made them all black. So America created black and white. This is
Yeah.
not something that black folks did. This is something that American law did. In fact, one of the first laws in the country, in the colonies, in the original colonies from Virginia, was about miscegenation, which was clearly delineated that a white woman, it didn't say a German woman, it's a white woman, one of the first times that phrase was used, should not marry a Negro. Right? So we have to be honest. This is an American creation,
Yeah.
what we just did. And the church, we created this image of a white deity that we promulgated to the rest of the world. We created the curse of Ham. That's not even anywhere in the Bible. It's really the curse to be Canaan, right? But we did that, and we made black people feel less than, because they were supposed to be from Ham. And so I think we need to be honest about it. And so now to create this division and create this society we live in, but not do any repair on it, and now say, well, you know what, let's not focus on race. Well, I don't want to see color. when you're the ones who created color, right? I mean, you created this, you started this ripple, but now you don't want me to see it.
Yeah.
And so that's being disingenuous. And so I think we owe it to our ancestors that created this problem that we have to fix, and we owe it to our descendants, that they don't have to worry about trying to fix something that we can do right now in our lifetime. Because kicking the can down the road only makes the can heavier over time.
Sure does. It picks up that much more on it.
That's
Robert,
right.
and I'm so glad you say that, because it is for folks, it can be a really difficult conversation when we get into race. And it's like, okay, well, that's a human concept, right? Construct. Specifically, it was created, as you said here, a phenomenon that happened here. We created color, as we all know and look back in, pre-U.S. history. But of course, our tendency is to not want to be honest with ourselves, especially because we're like, well, it was our ancestors, or it simply didn't happen, or we don't have all the facts. It was like, but we do. We
Yeah.
live with all of that. We live with the legacy of that. And until we are, I'm very public about my sobriety, but one of the things that I learned in a certain 12-step program is that one must be rigorously honest with ourselves if we're ever to set ourselves free.
Mm.
And it is that, and it's said, the truth shall set you free. And indeed, this is it. And so, yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be icky. It's going to make people like really angry. It's going to be there's going to be a range of emotions that come with all of this, but we cannot continue. We just can't. We can't we can't keep doing this. Like, we look all around us and we see the effects of not dealing with this. That this is true. There's trauma that we've all inherited from our ancestors. And it's not about picking out all of the horrible elements of it. It's not about that. It's what's done is done, but it's about making reparations, which is the appropriate word for this, and restoring ourselves to what is our one wholeness, right? The collective wholeness, and transcending beyond. I mean, that's the entire story of the Christ story. To me as
Right.
well. It's like it is a story of transformation and transcendence, and getting over our own broken humanness. The words are hard because I know there's so many people. I'll give you a quick story that happened to me, and why I'm so passionate about it, because I saw what happened over the Michael Brown murder in Ferguson. I had moved back to St. Louis, and was there when that happened. And that's after living in New York City for years. And I thought my life ended. And so I moved back there to be closer to my mom. And so when that happened, I saw what happened with my friends and family and extended family and the community at large, how they processed what had happened there. And who was at blame? Was it Michael, or was it the cop, right? Who who was there? Was there shared? It wasn't a, it was only binary. There was nothing else, but it was like, well, Michael caused this, or the cop, obviously a lot of fewer people were siding with Michael. It was primarily that he was at fault, not the one that was gunned down by the cop. My point though, is that I grew up there and I was away for 20 some years. I come back and I was just like, oh my God, because I have lived in New York, because I do live in an integrated society there, and then I come back to where it's not so integrated. In fact, it's not at all. St. Louis, a very, very, it's very partitioned.
Yeah.
It's like you got the suburbs where everybody looks alike there, and they live far away from anybody that doesn't look like them, right? And so you see the separation, and it all played out in this. And there, as Black Lives Matters started, people could not understand why there was rage for this.
Mm.
And I was watching this, and it's just, and it was just heartbreaking. It still breaks my heart to see that people didn't understand what the greater issue was. They just couldn't grasp it. And I thought, oh my God, we have so far yet to go.
We do. But we can make this journey.
Yeah,
We we can't, but we can't make it if we don't think we have a journey to take.
this is true.
Right. And one of the things that I try to stress people when I do speaking engagements across the country on this issue is it really has always started off wrong, right? And I'm saying this as somebody who's an author in this field, but people always, when we talk about reparation, they immediately want to go to the policy. What is it going to look like? What is it going to look like? And then they use the policy as an excuse or reason to go against the principle, right? When that is completely backwards in any logical conversation about bringing justice, period. God forbid, if you ever got in a car accident and your car is broken and busted, your insurance company, before they even write you a check, right, for how much the damages are, they want to know what happened. They want to know what happened. They don't just write you a check. They want to know what happened. You have to give a statement and all that type of stuff.
Right.
Even more so with people, right? Even it should be even more so with people. So instead of when black people or folks who are sympathetic to the black issues and cause advocate for our justice, instead of immediately going to, well, how much you want? No. Can we talk about what happened? Can we really talk about, because otherwise you can't appreciate how much it is going to be if you don't first know what happened. And if we can do this for our cars from getting in an accident, if our insurance companies do this for cars getting in accidents, how much more should we do it for people and suffering, right? And so that policy before principle is one of the major fallacies in reparation conversation. But we tend to, Mark, only do it when the recipient is black. We only want to talk about how much something can cost when the recipient is a black person. Meanwhile, if we're trying to fight Russia through Ukraine, we don't talk about, well, what, this. We want to talk about what's happening right now. And because of what's happening, we want to write a check. Right. Billions of dollars going to Ukraine. We want to talk about even right now going on in Palestine and Gaza. Everybody wants, but before, a check is written, immediately, let's focus on what happened. October 7th, October 7th, October 7th. And October 7th was terrible what happened. It was a terrorist act that was committed by some thugs and criminals, right? But we don't have any problem talking about what happened on October 7th. We don't have any problem talking about what Russia is trying to invade Ukraine. But when it comes to black people, first question want to come up, how much you want? We can't afford it. It's impossible. Too much money. But when it comes to other communities and other issues, please tell me what happened. I can't believe what they did to you all. And then easy to write a check. Easy to write a check. But when it comes to black suffering, we can't afford it. Y'all want too much. We need to be fiscal conservatives. We don't have the money for that, right? And so it shows you America really, as I say all the time, a great country, very benevolent. We don't mind being benevolent to other communities at all. And I'm not even against. I'm happy we are supportive of people who are suffering, right? When we want to be. But the problem comes in when the folk who are suffering are black. That's when we want to count the costs. We want to be liberal when it's, people who don't look like me, but we want to be very conservative when it comes to folk who look like me. And that's a problem. And it shows really the underbelly of American society that we still have a problem with black people. Honestly, I mean, that's what it boils down to. And when you consider the fact that even the term reparations and the policy of reparations is not even new to America. Do you realize this country repaired slave owners? When the slaves were free, yes, we gave reparations to slave owners.
We did.
Right? We gave not just Britain, who paid for the slaves who got free, but America. We wrote a check, $300 per slave, to the slave owners in the DC area. The United States of America wrote a check for $300 per slave, yep, to slaves that were in the DC area. We also, America, paid the pension for the Confederate soldiers who fought against us in the Civil War. I'm from Alabama. Alabama state legislature paid the pension for the Confederate these terrorists who committed insurrection, who killed American soldiers.
Yep.
700,000 American soldiers died in the Civil War, and they were killed by the Confederacy. But we paying, my grandmama and my great-grandmama paying the pension for these Confederate soldiers. So for all these folks saying, well, why should I pay? I don't believe in that. Do you think my great grandmama believed in what the Confederate cause was? Absolutely not. But her taxes paid the pension. And guess what, Mark? When the Confederate soldiers died, their widows got the pension. And when the widows died, they start setting up Confederate memorials and cemeteries across the South that to this day are still being subsidized by taxpayer dollars, my parents. And I own property in Alabama. So my tax dollars are going to subsidize a Confederate memorial in Alabama. And not just Alabama, but Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. They have state funded and state subsidized Confederate memorials for folk who killed American soldiers. Would you imagine Germany having a Nazi memorial, Adolf Hitler, being paid for by the Jewish people? Absolutely not. But only in America, right? And so I think we have to understand that reparations is not new to America at all. The issue is when it comes to black folks, we gave it to under a Republican president, Ronald Reagan, who gave it to Japanese Americans. And I agree with that. After them being placed in internment camps, we gave it to them because what we did to them during World War was terrible. Yes. We gave it, and I support this, to Jewish Holocaust survivors. I support that because what happened in Germany was wrong. We give not enough, but we give something to the indigenous Americans because we took their land. Yep. But black people are the only people who have not gotten a penny from this government specifically for our suffering. And I know somebody's gonna say, well, they get welfare. First of all, that's insulting because black folks are the ones who get welfare.
Yeah,
I've heard that comeback. We're not, in fact, according to the numbers, we're not even the largest beneficiary of welfare. It's white women. Same thing with affirmative action. I know somebody's gonna say, well, y'all got affirmative action. We're not even the largest beneficiary of affirmative action either. There's not been one thing this country has done just for black people because of what they have done to us, the wrong they've done to us. Not one solitary thing. But never mind the fact we give everything else other communities, but it's a problem when it comes to a black person.
So I'm going to ask what I think is a very simplistic question, but I think there's got to be a root to this and at some level. Do you think it is shame? What is the resistance? I mean, all of those are excuses. What is lying at the root that, as you said yourself, we have a problem with black people? What is causing that?
I think, Mark, honestly, and that's a very great question. And while I'm gonna start off by saying I don't like people do it for me, so I can't dare think for
Yep.
people.
I get that.
But I would do the best that I can.
Yep.
I really think that black people represent the conscience of America. And speaking spiritually, it's your conscience that causes you to repent. Your conscience tells you, the good that you're doing and the bad that you're doing, right? And I think that the black people in our experience shows the bad that America has done, and not just bad, but like the worst, the abominable. I mean, the Middle Passage, putting human beings on 4x4, 4 feet long and 12 feet wide wooden planks, babies, selling for 3 months in their own waste. Mothers willing to throw their children overboard because they didn't want them to stay in that ship. Then the auction block and being sold and separated and poked and prodded naked and being castrated for running away, your feet being cut off, women being raped. And I mean, the list just goes on. That's just slavery. And racial terror of places like Black Wall Street in Tulsa, East St. Louis, where you are, Atlanta, all across the country. Then you got the redlining. You have the biological testing that people did on Black women, the gynecological research that was gotten from Black bodies, Tuskegee syphilis study, the Henrietta Lacks DNA taken. I mean, the list just goes on and on. The not getting a GI Bill when that was a huge growth for America's middle class. The soldier, the Vietnam vet, so in November when I do my walk, I'm gonna highlight the fact that Black soldiers were not able to get the GI benefits, which were a huge boom to the American economy for white men and women who participated. We Black men were not. We just, because of racism, the Congress, first it was hard to get it passed. It's in my book. But the reason why were able to get it passed, because they didn't want black folks to be beneficiaries of it. They allowed the states to administer the GI benefits. So in states like Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee, and most other states that were white ran, the black people who applied never got the benefits. Never got the benefits, right? And so that's recent. That's like my granddad's history, you know. And then they set up separate VA hospitals for the black soldiers versus the white soldiers. So Tuskegee was a site for the black soldiers veteran benefits, because we can't have black folks in the same hospital. No, of course not. And same thing with black cemeteries. They don't have black folks buried next to white people. And so all this harm that America inflicted, this was not, you know, because people love saying how, you know, it's not fair to penalize the son for the sins of the father. That's not fair for us to be paying reparations for something our dads did. No, Mark Dilcomb did not do this. America did this, and America is still here, right? America, this ain't not this is we're not asking for Great Britain to pay reparations to black people. That's punishing the sins. No, we're asking America to pay for what she did. America, you the daddy. You are the father of American racism. You are the father of these racist policies. You are the father of America did redlining. America malappropriated the GI Bill. America administered the slave trade and slavery. America administered this, so America needs to pay. But what we have is a deadbeat debt, and I want to pay child support, you know, for children that she birthed. And so I think that when we understand what has happened, and what black people collectively represent, then yeah, you don't want to hear that. I mean, even as a person, like, you don't even want to talk about your own terrible misdeeds, right? You want to try to get over them. It takes a very mature person, emotionally and mentally, to talk about their worst actions.
This is true.
And that's what black folks represent to this country. So it's easy for us, it's easy for American, especially white churches, to go and do for African children halfway across the world than it is for them to do for black kids across the street from their church.
Yeah, boy, I often wondered that myself. Yeah.
You know, it's easy for us to build a hospital for Mexican children that's poor, and they are poor, and they need it, than it is to make sure we got universal health care right here in America.
Right.
I mean, and these ministries provide the same thing that these churches politically stand against in America. These hospitals that they're building in Mexico, they're supposed to be able to serve everybody, right? Universal health care. But these same parishioners don't want universal health care. They build schools for every child in this village to go to in Africa. But at the same time, they don't want to fund the public schools in the city that they live in.
Cognitive dissonance alive and well, right? It's like kink, kink. But it's compartmentalization to the extreme, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
Because we represent the conscience. Because if you did that, you have to pose the question: why are the folks in this city poor? What happened? What have I contributed to, or been ignoring, or my parents contributed to? How do we get this rich? How do we get this money? You know, you don't want to ask those type of tough questions. It's easy just to give to some kids in Argentina. It's easy to build a school for some kids in Mozambique than it is to answer those tough questions about why we are in the shape we're in this country.
so Robert, I love your passion. Clearly, it's a call. And you speak a critical truth. Now, I'm assuming you in your sermons as well preach on this, and you say you do speaking as well. Have you seen a change? Are you seeing are you making some dents in the armor of this issue?
I, you know, Mark, I thank God for the growth that I have seen when I do
Yeah.
workshops, speaking engagements. I thank God for it. And I think, I mean, I know I'm coming across pretty passionate now, and I am
Wow,
passionate.
love it. You
I
don't slow down for us.
I really do. But what I try to show people, especially when I do speaking engagements and workshops,
Yeah.
is that, I mean, I get it. Change is hard. To
Yeah.
see your failures is like one of the worst things ever. But if we're going to be a better person, or a better nation, or a better community, or even just a Christian family, or just a family of humans, and I think King mentioned it, we have to learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. And so I love, because I love God, I love God's creation, I love God's people. And if it's my calling to be the one to show the areas in our society that keep us separated. And I mean, like, keep us truly separate. I'm not talking about this fake kumbaya stuff that people do. Once there's a mass shooting, everybody comes together in these candlelight visuals. But then a couple months from then, they're off to their silos and they act like they don't even know each other.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that fake unity. I'm talking about real brotherhood, real sisterhood, where Mark's tears are my tears, and my tears are Mark's tears, and my pain
Yeah.
is his pain, and his pain is my pain. Um, and right now we just don't have that. We don't have a common unity, which is why we don't have a community. I say that again. We don't have a common unity, which is why we don't have a community. And that is, Jesus, asked, he said, who is my neighbor? And that's a question we should always pose to each other. Who is our neighbor? And do you love your neighbor as you love yourself?
Amen.
And so I've seen that in a transformational way. Um, Not as much as I would like, but it's when I have these conversations, there's always at least one or two people to come up to me afterwards and say how what I've said or what I've shown has really impacted them and they want to be better for it. I mean, God has never not allowed that to happen. And as God is my witness, every time I've done these workshops, and they are long, people are crying, and I even get, very even much more passionate, because I love people so hard. I love people so, and I believe in the power of God to be able to transform anybody. Anybody. I believe that God can change the heart of a Ku Klux Klan member today.
Mhm.
Right. I believe that with in my deepest of hearts. Because I know the work that God is doing in my life. And Robert is not perfect at all. I promise you, if you follow me around 24/7, you will find that out. But I know the work that God is doing in me. And I believe the scripture is true that he who has begun a good work in you will complete it to the day of Jesus Christ. And so I know that Bible says one man sows, one man waters, but God grants an increase. If it's my lot to water a seed that God has sown in generations ago, that's my calling. And I don't want to say if I think that I've made the complete difference. I would just like to say whenever God calls me home, that whatever work I've done, let it speak for me. And I hope that I have. I hope my life has made a difference. I hope the ministry that I've tried to do um has touched somebody's life and their heart, um for them to want to be a better person, not like me but like Christ. um and that's my biggest goal in life.
Yeah. Amen. I don't know where we could go any further with this. I could talk to you all afternoon. We are already almost at an hour, and again, we could go on for more, and I'm sure our listeners would love to hear that. But I'm going to let that be the end there. So the Reverend Dr. Robert Turner, Robert, it has been a true honor having you on. Thank you for enlightening me a little bit. I hope our audience gets something, just a wee bit like that passion in you and feeling the movement of what God calls you to do because you've got it. So good luck on your next walk next Friday, November 10th.
Thank you.
Godspeed and be safe, please. Why don't you share with our listeners where they can find out what you're up to? Where do they find you?
You can check me out on Robert Turner Ministries, or most important in my social media, because my personal webpage is being renovated right now. But on Instagram is Rev Dr. Robert Turner. On Twitter or now X, Robert R.A.Turner 1. Um, my book, Creating a Culture of Repair, can be found in all major bookstores for pre-order: Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, John Knox, Westminster. Um, and you can just type that into Google, Creating a Culture of Repair, by Robert Turner. And I would love to stay engaged with your audience. Love to try to see how I can help in whatever way they need or would like to see. me help them out, and love to come back on your show sometime.
Then we will make that happen, Robert. We're definitely brothers in spirit here, and I love like the work you're doing. The work we are doing here together is really trying to live out the world as we Christ wanted us to have. So,
amen. Thanks again for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Radical Love Live, co-hosted by Mark Dilcom and Kelly Wilson. All rights reserved. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and other popular podcast platforms. Go to radicallovelive.com to learn more about us, watch recordings of our live events, and listen to our podcast. We also invite you to check out what Kelly and Mark are doing by going to our websites. Find Kelly at kellywilson.com and Mark at markdilcom.com. This is Radical Love Live, where we explore faith outside the boxes.